Okay. Uh, Good evening. We're going to welcome to the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee meeting for October 12th, 2022. We are just going to hold on just a moment longer before we actually officially start to wait for some more committee members. Evening, Chris. There, the chair was having a little trouble logging in, but I see him connecting now.
Hi, everybody. I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, we will start. Good evening again. I am Amy Lopress. I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. I have a few opening remarks. This is actually my very last meeting of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, as I will be retiring at the end of October. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with VAAC. When a member of the 2010 Charter Revision Commission called me and asked me about their proposal to move the what was the Voter Assistance Commission into the Campaign Finance Board and all the work thereof, merge it with the Campaign Finance Board's work, I was really excited. I had been executive director at that time for only 4 years and only through one citywide election. But I always knew that our campaign finance and public financing work was focused on making our New York City democracy more participatory, and this was only, one more way to increase the participation in New York City democracy. In that first 2009 citywide election, I had my first taste of our voter education work because my previous positions at the agency hadn't really brought me in contact with working directly on the voter guide or our debate program. And, so I knew that, we really had the potential to do great things in educating voters about the elections and the electoral process and about the candidates. This opportunity to move the Voter Assistance Commission into the Campaign Finance Board was a chance to really scale those efforts and sustain them in a nonpartisan and well-established agency. And so really, I was very excited at the time. Now, after 3 more citywide elections in 2013, 2017, and 2021, a number of special elections, including one citywide special election for public advocate. I know that I was right to be excited, and I was right that this was a good move to move this work into this agency. 2021 was our biggest election in history, and we'll hear a little bit more about that in a report about our post-election report. But again, we were tapped with not only running the public financing program, running the debate program, running the biggest voter guide. Also, we were tapped with educating the public about a new type of voting, ranked choice voting, and all this during a pandemic. And so, it was really, a lot of work, but I think we really did a good job. And I think all of the work that we had done preparing for that, building our NYC Votes brand, building that work from 2011 on really helped support that giant election. And, it's amazing. And, voters came out in record numbers in the primary. Still voter turnout is not where we would like, but, people understood ranked choice voting. 80% of people ranked at least one election on their ballot. It was, very, exciting, very exciting election, a lot of work. And I think that, I'm really, really pleased to be leaving, our NYC Votes brand as an incredibly well-recognized and well-respected source for voter information to the public. Our new website is lovely and modern looking, and it has all the resources that voters need to learn about the candidates. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and what we will be doing for this coming election that in November. We will be hearing from a variety of different people. We'll be hearing from Harold Miller, who is the Executive Director of the Racial Justice Commission, to talk about the ballot initiatives that they have put on the ballot for November. We will be hearing from Ali Swatek, who is our Director of Policy and Research, about that post-election report about the 2021 election. We will be hearing about our work that we will be planning to do in reaching the underserved populations that we are charged in the charter to serve, which neighborhoods we'll be working in, how we'll be doing our get out the vote efforts for the 2022 election. And we will be hearing about our voter guide and how what is you can look for in that voter guide, and how the print guide is, sometimes is somewhat different than what is in the online guide. We'll be hearing about that from Crystal Choi, who is the Associate Director of Production at the CFB. So I am, sorry to be leaving, I'm, moving on, but I'm excited about the work that we've done. And I know that NYC Votes will only continue to grow and do better and better work. And with that, I turn it over to the chair, Chair Torres.
Hi, Amy. Hi, everyone. You've covered quite a bit, including some of the remarks I was going to make. So let me open it up to the other members of the committee who may have some comments with regard to today's meeting. I understand, Danielle, you wanted to make some comments about Amy and her work. Danielle, it's yours. Go ahead.
Oh,
Got it.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was off mute. I just wanted to thank Amy for her service. She really only touched the tip of what she's been doing this whole time, but I just wanted to contextualize it because, first of all, you all always know how much I respect and admire the staff, but having somebody like Amy who put everything into making sure that voters were heard from, that voters were respected, that the CFB and the VAAC did everything they could to expand the franchise and try to make it easier for people. And it isn't always easy. But I just wanted to point out in this particular time when there's so much voter suppression going on, that people like Amy are true Americans. And I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've done.
Well, thank you very much, Danielle. And I realized after I finished talking, so thank you. I mean, part of what we are really committed to is making our work more accessible. And of course, you know, you'll see that we have ASL interpreters and a Spanish and language interpreters tonight. I neglected, of course, for our vision impaired to give a visual description of myself when I started speaking. So I will do that now. And again, I apologize that I neglected to do that. I am a middle-aged woman who I actually am balding, but I am wearing a black headscarf and I am wearing a red sweater, and I am sitting in front of a in my office where the bookcase is and a yellow wall behind myself.
And I'm homesick wearing a hoodie with a really awful looking face right now. So thank you very much, Amy. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Hey, great. Any further comments from the members of the committee?
So hello, I'd
Go
like to
ahead,
chime in. I'm Christopher Malone. I'm a middle-aged man of European descent, I'm kind of colorblind. I think it's a lavender or light purple shirt with red, brown, and blue tie, striped tie, graying hair. And I'm sitting in my office at Farmingdale State College where I work as associate provost. I joined the VAAC. I was appointed by Mayor de Blasio in April of 2020. So I've only been on this commission for 2 years, give or take a couple of months, 2.5 years. But and in that time I've worked with Amy in this capacity, but I've known who Amy is for 20 years. When I first managed a local campaign in 2001 and going after campaign finance board funds and all of that, and watched Amy, you know, take the leadership of the CFB years later. You are a real treasure to New York, Amy, and it's that's no hyperbole. What Danielle said about being a true American in the sense of trying to expand democracy and not contract it, and trying to make voting easier and trying to make elections more understandable to people without partisanship, without drama, just trying to give people the information they need in a democracy where we need people to, you know, participate. And you have done all of that. You've created a model for the rest of the country. And there are so many people who might not know your name and might not know the work you've done day in and day out, but they've benefited from it. And I think that that's the highest honor that anyone can receive, that you know, the nameless and faceless who get the benefit of your hard work. So I don't have a drink. I have a glass of water or a mug of water. So I toast you. I wish you the best in your retirement, and I'm sure our paths will cross soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Okay, If no further comments, we can move right along.
Okay.
Amy, did you have something to say?
No, I was going to move right along to the next thing.
Okay, great. I just have a couple of comments very quickly, so that we can move quickly onto business. As you all know, we had recently a youth meeting, youth voting meeting, which was very, very good, informative. It was run by the youth ambassadors. Great presentations and research projects were presented. It was inspiring and young to see young people engaged. In fact, it got some press in that week's Daily News and Staten Island Advance. I thought it was very impressive. And moving right along, as you all know, the early voting starts for the next election on October 29th. And it will run straight into November 6th. Election day is on November 8th. Our voting guide should be hitting the mailboxes soon, within the next coming days. The voting guide will be going live on our New York City or nycvotes.org for those who want to log on. All we just want to remind the voters, particularly the voters out there who are listening now, that just to remember to flip over your ballot. There will be 4 proposals. 4 proposals, yes or no. They will all be covered in our voter guide. As I said, will be coming out soon. The statewide proposal would be on an environmental bond act. 3 other proposals are basically only New York based. Those come from the New York City Racial Justice Commission, which we'll be hearing from shortly. And basically, that's it. So I think that we should move on to the meeting, the general meeting itself. So I will turn it over to Amy to manage the discussion. Amy? Great.
Okay, so as I mentioned, first we are going to hear from Mr. Harold Miller, who is the Executive Director of the New York City Racial Justice Commission, to talk about the ballot proposals that will be on the ballot this November.
Thank you, Amy, and congratulations on your career and happy retirement and everything, so excited to be a part of your final meeting here. And to your chair, Torres, thank you for the invite, and to all the members of this committee, thank you for this opportunity to talk a bit about the ballot measures. Before I go into the details, again, my name is Harold Miller, he, him pronouns, Executive Director of the Racial Justice Commission. African-American male, I'm wearing a blue blazer, red and white shirt. I'm in my office with a blurred background for those who are on the phone or not able to see me clearly. So I'm again happy to be here again to talk a bit about the proposals that will be on the ballot in November in regards to racial equity. I have a brief presentation to walk through, so I'm going to share my screen, and so you can see. I need a screen sharing capacity if that's possible. If not, I could just talk it through.
Matt, is that possible?
Yeah, bear with me. I
No problem.
will bring
Okay.
it up for you. Just 1 second.
Oh, while Matt is putting together, I can start, and then the presentation will catch up to me. The
Should be able
commission.
to share now.
Should we share it now? Okay, great. Yeah, the commission was founded in 2021 by former Mayor Bill de Blasio, and its charge was specifically to identify and root out structural racism in our city, and begin to dismantle structural racism for all New Yorkers. And I just emphasize the word begin because I don't want to make any illusions that a commission would end racism with a charter commission and 3 ballot questions. But what it does do, this commission really took the time to work through and look at and talk to as many New Yorkers as possible, thousands of New Yorkers over the course of the year 2021, to identify what can be done to really address structural racism in our city and begin to root out those inequities in our policies, our cultures, structures that exist. And so after rounds and rounds of public input, after meeting with subject experts in various disciplines, our commission, which was made up of 11 commissioners, our chair is Jennifer Jones Austin, vice chair Henry Garrido, came together and developed 3 ballot measures that was delivered to the clerk's office at the end of last year. And this November, as the chair mentioned, voters will have an opportunity to vote on these 3 proposals. So the first question that voters will be charged to answer is adding a statement of values to guide government. So this proposal will amend the city charter to add a preamble that will be the introductory statement. It's give us a statement of values and vision, a city that we want to strive to be. In the preamble, it also talks about remedying the past harms that was done because of structural racism and marginalization caused by the city, and it's there to help us guide ourselves as a city. What kind of city we want to be in the future. So it looks at our structures, foundations, institutions, and laws as a way can we promote justice and equity for all New Yorkers. So if it passes, we will add what's to be a preamble to our city charter, which currently doesn't exist. The second question is the establishment of a racial equity office, plan, and commission. So ballot question 2 would, if passed, would require the city to develop racial equity plans every 2 years. So every city agency will be charged with developing a racial equity plan as a way to reduce or eliminate racial disparities from their agency's work. And that work will be coincide with the budgetary process that agencies go through. So it's putting racial equity as a priority for city agencies. It's not just an afterthought. That work will be managed through our Office of Racial Equity that will work with city agency, not just on the planning process, but also year out to make sure city services and programs are actually getting to communities across the board and be able to collect data and report on equity related work that's happening. And then when we talk about the Commission on Racial Equity, that is our accountability tool for question 2. It's just to make sure that city government is fulfilling its responsibilities of putting racial equity in the forefront in decision making. And so it'll work closely with agencies on the citywide planning. It'll review plans. It'll provide advice. It will also work with the Office of Racial Equity on a continuous basis to look at what the city can do to continue to evolve as a city that is more racially equitable and that's reducing disparities for all New Yorkers. And this commission will be made up of New Yorkers who historically are not involved in not on commissions. We have many commissions, as you all know, that many of the same people may serve on them, or you see similar names on a lot of different commissions. Nothing wrong with the good people who serve on all those commissions, but we felt strongly that it need to have voices of young people. It need to have those who were formerly incarcerated. It need to have those who are young parents and struggling for childcare. Needed to make sure those who come from public housing, and so we want to make sure there's a diverse background of New Yorkers to serve on this commission and really be the tool to hold the city accountable for the work around racial equity. So that's question 2 for voters to consider. Question 3 talks about the true cost of living measure. This will amend the city charter, if passed, to create a true cost of living measure that actually tracks how much it costs to live in New York City. I don't need to tell anyone here that we live in a very expensive city, but we actually don't really have any formal way of measuring what that cost is. And so this ballot measure, if passed, would put a real dollar amount to what it costs to live here in New York City, not just to not be poor, but to really live with dignity. And from that, we can develop programs and have policy decisions by the city to actually make sure that, to work with New Yorkers to get closer to that true cost of living measure. That is to make sure that we include housing, food, childcare, transportation, other necessity costs without public, private, or formal assistance. So it's about what it will cost to live with dignity, and to thread these three things together. We talk about in question 1 kind of what city we aspire to be. In question 2, what we call the action question, what actions we need to take in order to become that city that we talked about in question 1. And then question 3 is our accountability tool. Are we meeting the mark? And one of the ways, obviously, we meet the mark is by, measuring what the financial or income gaps that exist amongst New Yorkers. And we know that if we was to measure it today, New Yorkers of color will fall behind white counterparts. And so that accountability tool as a measurement to see if we are really doing the work to hit the goals of number 1. And so for voters' consideration, they can vote on aspiration, vote yes or no on aspiration, action, and accountability. So with that all being said, we are running a nonpartisan education campaign. Our goal is to reach all New Yorkers, and we're doing that in many different ways. We are working with community-based organizations, elected officials. We are going to run ads on subways and bus shelters, and on your devices, you'll see ads when you're on social media. Also, we'll have TV and radio as well. We're getting our message out through earned media. We were able to do an event with the Speaker of the City Council, Adrian Adams, yesterday, where we're encouraging New Yorkers to learn about the ballot measures, to get themselves involved, and to help spread the word. and learn more about the ballot questions, and encouraging your neighbors, your friends, everyone to go out and vote. And so we're still doing that work, and we are very proud of a campaign that we're running, because it's grassroots, but at the same time broad-based, in the sense that we are reaching many different New Yorkers in many different ways over the next several weeks. And if you're interested in helping us along the way, I'll leave my information in the chat. But you can always get a hold of us, if not through me, but through our office, nyc.gov/racial justice, to learn more about the ballot measures, and to sign up to volunteer or get updated information about activities happening with the commission. You can also email us directly if you have particular comments or questions that you may not be able to ask today, on racialjustice@charter.nyc.gov. And you can always follow us on our social media channels at Racial Justice NY on Twitter, or on Instagram and Facebook at Racial Justice NYC. And I also encourage you to check us out on YouTube. We have tons of content of meetings from last year, commission meetings up through recently in the summertime, and you could get a good sense of our the way we were thinking about how we can address structural racism, how we can how can we put forth ballot questions for voters to consider that actually will have real impact. A lot of the public input sessions, commission meetings, and other events gives you a really good sense of that. So I encourage you, if you have some time, to go on our YouTube channel as well to check it out. And I'll take any questions if I'm allowed to, or, you move on. Amy, you let me know.
No, sorry, I'm on mute. Okay.
That's okay.
So thank you. Thank you very much, Harold. We will, again, any questions from first I'll take any questions from the committee members.
First of all, just Mr. Miller, could you stop sharing the screen just so we can
Sure.
see the ASL interpreters?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Harold, I have a question. I mean, this commission appears to be a very progressive commission, and I don't know of any other city or state that has a similar commission. Do you know if there are other commissions like yours exist anywhere in the United States?
Well, to our knowledge, there has not been a commission that is actually charged with presenting charter revisions. We are a charter revision commission that currently does not exist, to our knowledge, anywhere else in the country at this point. There are advisory groups, there are working groups, there are boards that are addressing racial equity in different ways, but to actually present legislation for consideration is a first, to our knowledge, in this country.
Great. Amy, it's yours.
Are there any other questions? Oh, okay. I see there is a question from a member of the public. So it's the question is, what intersectional work are you doing around supporting Black and Brown disabled folks in New York City?
Well, that's a great question, and that work, will be like really focused on, if you talk about question one, for example, or not question one, I'm sorry, because question one is actually a state question, but we get into the statement of values question. We talked about in New York that all New Yorkers can see themselves, all New Yorkers are able to live with dignity and be able to have access, opportunity, and power. And, focusing on, access and opportunity and power, that doesn't just stops at the color of a person's skin. It's about all New Yorkers being able to have a government that will be able to benefit from, be able to live their lives the way they want. And so whether you're of color, Black, Brown, and disabled, you should be able to live a life with dignity and be able to do the things you need to do. And so question one establishes that, frame. Question two, in the work, it talks about accessibility, talks about, and I encourage folks to, go on our website, nyc.gov/racial justice, to read specifics in our final report. But essentially, it talks about how the Office of Racial Equity will do the work, to make sure that accessibility is obtained for all New Yorkers. And a lot of that work is already underway in the Adams administration with the Mayor's Office of Equity that is bringing intersectionality to fruition. And so the work of this Charter Commission, if ballot 2 measure passes, it codifies that work into law. But the work of making sure that we are building a city that is accessible for everyone, no matter if you're Black or LGBTQ or disabled. You should have a city that works for you, and you should be able to benefit from it, be able to live with dignity, most of all. Oh, you're muted, Amy.
All right. Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Romali Doster, for that question. Are there other questions? Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We're looking forward to seeing all the work that you're doing to advertise these ballot initiatives. Again, there are 4 ballot initiatives on the ballot. These 3 are the city only. The one is a statewide ballot initiative, but so look for these as questions 2, 3, and 4 on your ballot, on the back side of your ballot when you go to vote. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And so now we'll move on. We're going to hear from Ali Swatek, who's our Director of Policy and Research, who's going to talk about the New York Campaign Finance Board's report on the 2021 elections.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Amy. I think I need co-host capability to do screen share, which I don't know if I have.
It should work for you right now, Ali. Can you do it?
Let me see. Share. Okay, and I have 3 monitors right now, so someone needs to tell me if they can see my notes or just the...
Now it's in slideshow view.
You see it? Okay, yeah, hold on, let's see. How about now?
That's perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Swatek. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Policy and Research at the New York City Campaign Finance Board. I'm a white woman with brown hair. I'm wearing glasses and I have a purple cardigan on. I'm in the office. And today I'm going to share with you some of the top line notes about our 2021 post-election report, which we published at the end of September. So for those of you who are wondering, what is the post-election report? So it's published in September of the year following citywide elections, and it covers the whole 4-year election cycle. So we're talking from 2018 to 2021. It's summarizing the campaign finance activity and fundraising that candidates for office are doing in the city for local office only. And that's the 5 citywide offices that are part of the campaign finance program. And it's also analyzing the public matching funds program, which of course is administered by the Campaign Finance Board. And at the end, we recommend improvements to the program on the whole. And so the way we've done the last thing historically is through policy and legislative recommendations. But this report also talks about smaller improvements that we can make internally to improve the experience for candidates based on our analysis of the way that the NYC Votes Contribute platform works, how independent expenditures are being reported, and things like that. So just a really quick, who is the policy and research team? We are the folks who primarily produced this report, of course, with assistance from the amazing subject matter experts throughout the agency who work on individual aspects of the program. So we do intergovernmental outreach, perform policy and legislative analysis, and produce original data-driven research on voting and campaign finance issues. I am the director of this team. Jamie is our senior data manager. Luigi is our policy and data research analyst. Ray is our urban fellow, and Turquoise is our intergovernmental analyst. So before we started writing the report, we did some unit interviews and planning just to kind of get a sense of how the election cycle went for different aspects, for different units and folks who specialize in different areas of the program. So we talked to our candidate services unit, our audit unit, special compliance, legal, and public relations. And some of the takeaways that we heard from all of those units were that there were some isolated trends for campaign finance law changes. So we were just seeing some things that kind of were rising to the area of interest in national elections that we kind of wanted to get out ahead of in our policy and legislative recommendations. And then another thing we heard was that the impacts of the program are hard to observe with one election cycle and so many different things happening. So you folks have probably heard me talk about this a lot, but we had a lot of changes to elections in 2021. And that wasn't just changes from like the voting side. So we also had huge changes to the public matching funds program, including to the maximum public funds that candidates could receive, the contribution limit, and the matching funds ratio. And we also had our first ranked choice voting election in the primary election in June. We also had our first June primary election because it previously took place in September. And there were also just other social changes impacting fundraising campaigning, primarily the COVID-19 pandemic, and confounding factors like we had program A participants and program B participants. We were kind of running two programs simultaneously because of the way that the law changes took place. And we didn't want to draw conclusions based on this election cycle alone, because just one example of how the COVID-19 pandemic maybe impacted fundraising is that we saw a huge increase in credit card contribution usage. We're not sure if that was just kind of like a social change and that's going to be here to stay, or if it's something that happened because there were so few in-person fundraisers taking place because folks were primarily just fundraising online. So our goals of the report were to provide neutral reporting that focused on offices and elections, not individual candidates or races. We wanted to provide consistent statistics, it's very hard to say, that can serve as markers for future reports, while also providing in-depth analysis with statistical value. We also created data visualizations in Tableau on our website to allow for more just easy comparisons between offices. So you could compare one council district to another, and then you weren't, in an awkward position of flipping through pages or scrolling through a PDF document. You could kind of look at them side by side. And then we wanted to make minimal recommended changes to the Campaign Finance Act because of the fact that so many changes took place in the program for 2021. We wanted to have another few election cycles under our belt so that we could see how those changes are impacting fundraising, candidate behavior, expenditures, and how folks are spending their money and things like that. All right, so other sections of the report that I haven't already talked about, we have a overview of the public funds program, analysis of first-time payees, which was kind of the way that we identified a shortcut way kind of seeing how candidates who are running for the first time were impacted by the program versus ones who were already part of the program and had been paid before. We did an analysis of the NYC Votes Contribute platform, which is, as far as we know, one of a kind and the first free credit card contribution platform offered by a government agency to candidates who are running for office. And it also helps those candidates comply and meet our act-in rules. And an analysis of independent expenditures, which kind of just drew conclusions about what was going on in the world of independent expenditures in 2021 and being able to compare that to 2017 and 2013, since that's a fairly new aspect of our program. And finally, we have an audit and enforcement summary of election cycle 2017, which sounds like it's something that's kind of happening a little late, but because we do such thorough audits and there is the opportunity for campaigns to respond to us and appear before the board and things like that, we are only able to finalize and kind of report on those statistics in the preceding election cycles report. And then last but not least, our policy and legislative recommendations, which I'll speak more about at the very end. So in our public funds program overview section, we discussed some top line interesting facts about the election cycle. We paid $126.9 million in public funds to 308 candidates. That was matching nearly $18.3 million in contributions from New Yorkers. This is a record number. I feel like I don't have to say that to folks, but it was in large part because of the program changes and because of the factors that encourage so many candidates to run. It meant that we also paid out a record number of not only dollars, but first-time candidates and candidates in total. Small dollar contributions made up 84.6% of contributions in the primary and 79% in the general, which is a very interesting statistic and kind of still keeping in line with trends we've seen in the past for open elections that are electing a new mayor, which is one of the factors in 2021 as well. And then the last piece, which we think is really important, 71.6% of primary contributions and 70.1% of general election contributions were given by New York City residents. So the whole purpose of the program, of course, is to match small contributions given by New York City residents. And so these are two of the most important standard statistics that we're looking to compare over election cycles and be able to continue to report on and see how our program is behaving and to kind of measure success in that way. So our analysis of first-time payees found that there was no clear advantages to being a program veteran. And I keep saying this, but this is basically an indication that the program is behaving exactly the way we would like it to. It means that if you're a candidate who's running for the first time, you have about the same average dollar amount of contributions raised versus a program veteran. So that's an incredible statistic that I found to be very comforting in knowing that there's no clear advantage to being someone who's running again. You're doing this for the first time, but you're not disadvantaged in any way by doing that. And then we found that most districts with the highest percentage of candidates not meeting the threshold, which is the way that we determine whether you're qualified to receive public funds, are in council districts in Upper Manhattan and outlying areas of other boroughs. So this last conclusion is something that we're looking forward to exploring further in future reports as we gather additional information about candidates from the demographic perspective, socioeconomic statistics, and things like that, because we would like to inquire more about why this is happening. So we also had a chapter analyzing NYC Votes Contribute, which again is a credit card processing platform created as a public resource to serve all candidates who are running for city office in New York. And like I said, we saw a huge expansion of credit card contributions compared to the other methods of contribution. Check, cash, money order. We saw all of those decline in usage in 2021 compared to previous election cycles. Not only that, 93.9% of all candidates in the 2021 election cycle used the NYC Votes Contribute to raise contributions. So for the most part, contributions that were being raised by credit card were being raised on NYC Votes Contribute, which is great. And then finally, candidates who received public funds were more likely to use Contribute over those who did not receive public funds. And so in some ways, if you're looking for a measurement of whether NYC Votes Contribute platform is assisting candidates from the compliance side, this may also indicate that the platform is working in allowing folks to qualify for public funds because they're able to substantiate all the contributions they're receiving and eventually get paid, which is exactly how we would like it to work. In our analysis of independent expenditures, we found two interesting facts. One was that digital advertising spending increased significantly, and that's kind of, and by a huge amount, and that's kind of alongside the trend of credit card contributions increasing. And it makes sense because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that folks were watching television more often, maybe spending more time inside. So digital advertising spending increasing is exactly something that we would expect to happen, but it is a little surprising by how much it took place. The last thing we found was that less than 1% of all communications distributed by spenders in the 2021 mayoral race were negative. And one of the reasons why we found that was because predominantly independent expenditures in the mayor's race were being spent by single candidate entities, which meant that it was a single candidate being supported by the independent expenditure entity. And that was kind of just an interesting trend that we noticed in this year. All right, last but not least, oh, actually second to last, our audit enforcement summary of election cycle 2017. Just a reminder, our whole process ensures that candidates comply with universal requirements and use the public funds that they receive in a lawful manner. So we do a complete and thorough audit, as well as enforcement, including levying penalties and taking back public funds. So of the campaigns audited by the CFB, 62% did not receive any penalties. And of those who did, most were penalized less than $5,000. So that's also a metric that we want to continue tracking as we go through election cycles to make sure, that there's nothing that's out of the ordinary here. And this is a good statistic. Okay, so our goal for the policy and legislative recommendations, I've already kind of given a bit of a preview here. But the goal was to keep it simple and to wait until there's more time and data to fully analyze the impact of the massive program changes that took place in 2021. We want to save the big analysis for the 2025 PER, which sounds like it's a really long time away, but actually that election cycle is going to be starting in just another year. So it's one of those things where we kind of want to have the data from the 2023 council redistricting election and the 2025 election, where all of the citywide races and borough president will also be up for election, in order to be able to take a look at what was taking place in 2021 and see how those changes impacted the program. So we focused on novel campaign finance impacts or trends that we perceived as a possible threat to the program. The first recommendation is to prohibit campaigns from receiving cryptocurrency donations. So this is a trend. Obviously, we've all been paying attention to the rise of cryptocurrency, but from the campaign finance side, it's also kind of a trend too, where there is a bit of dispute from the federal government and state governments on how to approach cryptocurrency campaign contributions. So the FEC, which is the entity that that is in charge of federal campaigns, and 7 states allow cryptocurrency as an in-kind. And that's because they perceive cryptocurrency to be just like kind of falling under the umbrella term definition of anything of value. 4 states currently ban them completely because there is just concern over the fact that there's anonymity and not an ability to verify the source and amount of the contribution because of the variability of, because of the volatility of the value of cryptocurrency. There's also a lack of centralization of authority that does take place with banks, but is not always certain with cryptocurrency. And then last but not least, in our perspective, it's especially dangerous from the perspective of the matching funds program, because we're requiring an additional level of documentation for contributions that are going to be matched with public funds. Okay, our second recommendation is to eliminate potential foreign influence on ballot proposals. So this is also a bit of a trending topic, but not super recent trending topic. It's more, it was more trending in post 2016's presidential election. Of course, we paid attention to Russian involvement in that race, but it kind of highlights why foreign nationals are prohibited from contributing to candidates running for office. We don't want to see outside pressure on local elections or federal elections that could manipulate the democratic process, or dilute the impact of voters who are actually affected by the election and would be represented by the folks who they're voting for. So in New York, foreign nationals are prohibited from making independent expenditures in any state or local elections, but there is a potential loophole regarding contributions to other committees spending on behalf or against ballot proposals. So this is one of those things that we're kind of trying to get out ahead of. At least 6 other states have or are in the process of passing legislation to ban foreign national influence on ballot proposals. And that's something that we just would like to see as a loophole closed at the state level. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, or you can feel free to email me. It is aswatek@nyccfb.info. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the committee members or from members of the public?
Allison, how can the public get a copy of that report?
If you go to our website, our report is linked. I believe it's in the media section, and then you can click reports.
Okay. Thank you.
And seeing it online, you'll be able to see those interactive maps and some interactive dashboards that compare the data. So it's like, so in addition to reading the report.
Yep, exactly.
Anyone else? Okay, so we will move along to our next topic, which is focusing, we've been looking past a little bit, and so now we'll look forward to the upcoming election, and we are going to hear from our Director of Partnerships and Outreach about our outreach work. Omar Suarez is the Director of Partnerships and Outreach at the Campaign Finance Board, and he was going to give us a presentation.
All right, thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Omar Suarez. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Outreach with the Campaign Finance Board, as Amy just mentioned. I'm a tan-skinned man of about 32 years old. I'm of African and Spanish ancestry. I'm wearing a red long sleeve shirt, and I'm sitting at my desk at the CFB office, but my background is blurred, so you wouldn't know that otherwise. I'm going to be presenting on 2 topics, 2 brief presentations this evening. The first is on the priority neighborhoods that we've identified within public affairs for prioritizing our outreach and engagement efforts in order to reach the most underrepresented groups within New York City as it pertains to the democratic process. At the top of the meeting, Amy mentioned that this is one of the mandates that the CFB has, is reaching these voters. And then second, I'll be talking about the our plans for voter education and get out the vote efforts as we approach this November general election. So I'll just get started. I actually need to share my screen. I apologize. So I'm working on a screen I have not shared from. So I just want to make sure that you can only see my PowerPoint. That's good. Thank you. So I'll just jump right into it and speak a little bit about the Partnerships and Outreach Unit. So we are the unit within the Public Affairs Division that works on community partnerships across the city, as well as direct-to-voter outreach. So working with many of the not-for-profit organizations, educational institutions, even some businesses, membership-based organizations, and many others throughout the city to reach more voters. We also conduct direct-to-voter outreach, such as campaign style activities, but obviously with a nonpartisan approach. Again, I'm the director of this unit. Also on this team, I want to give a big shout out to the rest of my team, some of whom are with us this evening. Gauri Patel is the Senior Partnerships Manager. Olivia Brady is our Youth Engagement Coordinator. Luke Messina is the Voting Rights and Accessibility Coordinator. Ama Aqua is the Training Coordinator, and Ting Lin is the Engagement Coordinator and is the newest member of our team. So as I kind of go into the later part of the presentation, I'll touch on some of the work that each of these members of the team is doing. So just moving ahead, the priority neighborhoods. This is now the second time that Public Affairs is identifying and emphasizing outreach in priority neighborhoods. I believe if you go on our website, the Campaign Finance Board website, you can find community profiles, which were published back in 2020, and these were informed by the first round of priority neighborhood selection process. And so this is now the second time that we're doing it, and I'm going to share on the screen the actual selection of neighborhoods that we have identified, but I want to speak a little bit about kind of what this process was like, how we came up with these neighborhoods. So as I mentioned, this is not the first time that we've identified priority neighborhoods. In the past, those neighborhoods we've selected neighborhoods with very low voter turnout, as well as large numbers of limited English proficient voters and many naturalized citizen voters. And that remains the case for this iteration. These are areas that have very low voter turnout relative to the rest of the city. High numbers of naturalized citizens, as well as many limited English proficient voters. That's what if you notice, there's an LEP is repeated throughout this slide. And I apologize, I should just describe what is on this slide. So I listed on the slide right now are 4 columns with groups of neighborhoods throughout the city. They're grouped in 4 clusters, and next to the list of neighborhoods is for each column, there are languages besides English that are spoken in large numbers in that cluster of neighborhoods. So the first cluster is the South Bronx. These are neighborhoods that, well, it may take a while if I run through every single neighborhood, but it's neighborhoods throughout the South and West Bronx. These are neighborhoods that have a lot of limited English proficient voters, primarily Spanish speaking. You also have a relatively low voter turnout, and the lowest voter turnout among young people that we found in the city. So this kind of represents one of the major clusters that we've decided and have prioritized as where we want to focus our outreach and engagement efforts. The second column or cluster of neighborhoods is in what we're calling North Central Queens. So it's the stretch of neighborhoods running from Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and Corona, all the way to Flushing and Bay Terrace. So on opposite ends of Flushing Meadow, Corona Park, if you are familiar with Queens. This is sort of like the melting pot of the melting pot, like in terms of diversity within our city. This group of neighborhoods had among the highest numbers of speakers of Chinese, Korean, Hindi, as well as many Spanish language LEP speakers. The third cluster of neighborhoods is along South Brooklyn. So this is a neighborhood that this is a group of neighborhoods that we had been looking at and wanting to do further engagement in since 2020 with the first iteration of priority neighborhoods. This is a stretch from Sunset Park down to Sheepshead Bay, Brighton Beach, Coney Island, and several others. Within these neighborhoods, you have among the highest numbers in the city of Arabic, Russian, and Urdu speaking voters. And last but not least, the fourth cluster is two neighborhoods in East Brooklyn, Canarsie and East New York. This is one of the other clusters of neighborhoods with the lowest youth voter turnout, as well as one of the clusters with the largest numbers of Haitian Creole speaking voters. Now, if a lot of the languages that I've named so far are not current voter guide languages, but they are going to be included in languages that we serve with the voter guide beginning next year. And my colleague Crystal is going to speak a bit about that. I believe we'll touch on that, and we've mentioned it on other occasions. So we wanted to incorporate some of these additional languages even beyond the five that we serve at this moment. But in addition to language and voter turnout, we also looked at neighborhoods with voters with the largest numbers of people in probation as a proxy for which neighborhoods have the most people in contact with the criminal punishment system. We also looked at data from the census on people with disabilities, as well as data on areas with the largest numbers of errors on their ranked choice voting ballots. So we covered a pretty wide spectrum of data sources. I should mention that this sort of data mining and research was done out of the policy and research unit, as well as Amanda, our Deputy Director of Public Affairs, also really dove into this data and came up with sort of a pretty well-researched list of neighborhoods that kind of checked off a lot of these different boxes. And then within the partnerships and outreach team, we gave some additional thought to neighborhoods where we're not seeing as active or proactive outreach from organizations to us to kind of engage in voter outreach and education. We wanted to prioritize areas where maybe there wasn't that or as much of an active civic life or not as much of an active civic institutions to do this work and where we could provide more value. So that's a little bit of the background in how we came up with these neighborhoods and clusters of neighborhoods. I want to just move ahead and talk a little bit about kind of like how we see these neighborhoods playing into our outreach efforts moving forward. This is sort of a framework that we use within our partnerships and outreach unit. We like to, think of organizations and partners throughout the city as falling like kind of through a funnel. So at the top level are what we call citywide partners. And so any organization that reaches out to us and wants to do some kind of voter engagement or voter education activity, we're going to find a way to work with them and provide whatever resource or asset we have available. Now, at the second level is where we have what we are calling the priority neighborhoods and language partners. So organizations and groups that are based in these priority neighborhoods that we have identified and that also serve some of the languages that we're going to be serving with our voter guide. And this is where we want to do more kind of like proactive outreach. I showed you our team, we're about 6 people. We can't be everywhere in the entire city. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing our proactive outreach in these neighborhoods that we've identified as where more voters are that we want to engage. And then at the third level are champion partners who it's not as important part of this presentation, but these are groups that have a little bit more capacity in terms of co-creating voter education programming. And looking forward, I think it's important to see where all these priority neighborhoods will fit in for us in terms of our outreach activities. When it comes to digital or printed materials, I think we want to focus on getting those to these priority neighborhoods. If folks reach out to us and want to get some printed materials, for example, I think we'll always try and fulfill that request. But in terms of proactively trying to get the information out there and making it more available, we're going to prioritize that outreach along these priority neighborhoods. Same thing goes for workshops and presentations, which I'm going to speak about briefly. Any additional training or train the trainer type activities, doing in-person outreach. These are all things that we want to just really target more within these priority neighborhoods, and sort of let other requests that maybe fall outside of these come in sort of as requested basis. The last thing I mentioned, I think my colleague Mitchell may get into this shortly, but we also do our marketing and digital communications unit does ad campaigns, including paid ad spending. And so those campaigns will be using these priority neighborhoods and the zip codes that overlap with them to target their spending. So that's what we have for the priority neighborhoods. I can pause right here if there's any questions about it before I move into the just sort of our outreach efforts and get out the vote plans for the upcoming election.
And I'll just mention that, members of the public, you can type your questions into the question and answer field.
Okay, I'm gonna keep speaking, so I'll if someone thinks of something, I'm not going away just yet. Now we have an election coming up in a month, and as I mentioned, partnerships and outreach, our focus is really on doing that direct to voter engagement, working with a lot of the organizations throughout the city to help us reach these voters. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the plans that we have, the different kinds of activities we're going to be engaging in moving forward. Just a quick overview. So the different kinds of activities that and efforts that we're making include, we'll be distributing outreach and educational materials through partners as well as in our own direct to voter outreach efforts. We have, and I'm going to speak about each of these a little bit more in depth. We have voter education workshops and presentations that we're delivering with partners throughout the city. We'll be conducting get out the vote text banking events, and I'll provide those details shortly. We're also doing in-person outreach and voter registration. And I'll also speak briefly about our youth ambassador program. So just going right into it, something that we've been doing since the beginning of this year, first for the June primary, then the August primary, is working with our production team and our content and design team to create some some outreach materials that we can use in our own outreach efforts and also share with partners so that they can include it in their voter outreach efforts. So for, I think I started at the beginning of 2021 or end of 2020, and something that I was hearing for a while from partners was like, do you have any palm cards or something that we can use and we can include in our outreach materials when we do tabling or some type of event close to an election. A lot of organizations are very interested in civic engagement and getting voter participation up within their communities, but they don't necessarily do elections. They may not necessarily feel confident in creating something from scratch. So they do look to the CFB and NYC Votes as like a go-to resource, as an asset, as an expert to provide this stuff. And so we created a couple of basic outreach assets. In this case, because there's a printed voter guide that's being sent out, we set aside some bulk copies of that voter guide. We also included a palm card once again this year, and a large print flyer. These went out to over 400 partners. That included the nonprofit organizations I mentioned, but also elected officials and community boards who we were able to reach out through partnership with the Policy and Research Unit. We ended up sending close to 200,000 pieces of these three assets to those over 400 locations. Those should be hitting mailboxes. I think it's any day now, actually. And we'll also have several thousand copies more that we'll use in our own outreach events and activities, but also that we can provide to partners who maybe come to us within the last couple of weeks before the election. So this is something that we want to make available to organizations throughout the city who want to do voter outreach. The second thing, we've also been doing text banking since 2020, and that's something we're going to continue. For the November election, we're looking to text about 250,000 voters. Those events are going to be happening on October 29th and November 5th. Those are 2 Saturdays before Election Day. It's the first and last week of early voting. The RSVP links for those events, they're open to the public. Anyone can volunteer at them. You can find them at nycvotes.org on our events calendar. The way this works is we have a texting platform. Volunteers sign up. They come in that day. It's entirely virtual, so they're not coming in, but they log on that day to a Zoom meeting that we have. They text sometimes thousands of voters per one volunteer through the platform. They get responses. People have questions. They want to know, hey, where's my poll site? Or what do I do if I submit an absentee ballot? And many other questions like that voters have. The volunteers have scripts that we provide them with in training so they can answer most questions, but we also have staff on hand to support and provide answers to other questions that volunteers aren't ready to answer. So for this time, we're going to be looking at young voters, ages 18 to 29, voters in our priority neighborhoods, which I just spoke about, and voters who've maybe voted in presidential elections but haven't voted in midterm elections in the past. So again, like trying to really convert those presidential year voters into every year voters. So far this year, we've messaged over, we sent over 800,000 messages. So I think by the end of this cycle, we'll have messaged over 1 million voters for elections in 2022. And that kind of like constant contact is one of the ways that you can get people to stick around and be consistent voters. The next piece is voter education workshops and presentations. This is something that we've also been doing consistently for every election cycle. We invite partners that we're working with closely to organize an event, or sometimes organizations will reach out to us. We cover, wide array of topics depending on kind of like what each organization wants to discuss or wants for what information they want for their audience. But in general, we talk about why midterm elections matter, what they can find on the ballot, what the key dates and deadlines are, the different ways to vote, how they can use NYC Votes resources, especially those that are on our website. We do cover sort of the different offices that are on the ballot, as well as just giving an overview of the ballot proposals that voters will be voting on this November. We do have access to ASL interpretation and closed captioning, which we provide upon request. And for this cycle, we're doing these in a mix of virtual, in-person, and some hybrid format events. In the past, we had limited these to virtual, but I think this time with this election, we're feeling a little bit more comfortable and with safety protocols in place. We're doing some in-person events as well. I'll just highlight a couple of the events coming up. These are just some of the ones that we have planned over the next month. We're working with East Flatbush Community Partnership on a series of trainings for members of their community and neighborhood. So there'll be a community conversation and a Flip Your Ballot forum. The Flip Your Ballot forum is going to be about the ballot proposals. We're also doing an event with Sydney, which is the Center for Independence of Disabled New Yorkers. joining their virtual meeting to provide them with information on the upcoming election and ballot proposals. That's a group of advocates for voters with disabilities and people with disabilities in general. So it's really important to get people in that position the information so that they can disseminate it to their network. We're also working with Lighthouse Guild to do a virtual presentation for adults with vision loss. We're hosting a sort of an open to the public broad info session with the 3 library systems. That's going to be on October 24th, and you can also find that on our website. Another event that we're really looking forward to and have been working on is an event with JCC Manhattan on doing an in-person voter education session for their community members, including many voters with special needs and who also, want to be able to exercise their right to vote and receive that information. And last but not least, the civic engagement workshop we're going to be doing with Gutman Community College at CUNY campus. That's going to be on November 2nd. There are actually many more that we've scheduled throughout. Oftentimes, these are meetings that we're invited to speak at. By the time this election is over, we're going to be probably close to 100, if not over 100 different of these presentations. We're also doing it's an in-person outreach. So I mentioned that we've scheduled, or we had been doing more virtual outreach over the past 2 years. Of course, with the pandemic and COVID cases, in-person had been challenging in 2021 and 2020. This year, we've been doing more in-person outreach. September 20th was National Voter Registration Day. And we partner with the 3 library systems throughout the city, the YMCA and the New York City Public Advocates Office. Registered voters, also provided forms for people to fill out at home, and just increasing awareness of the upcoming election. We had a voter registration drive with Civics for All, which is an initiative of the Department of Education at Comic-Con last weekend. And today, some of our team members joined the Department of Corrections and the Voting Rights on Rikers Coalition to register voters at Rikers Island. That was today, actually. So again, like we have other events that are scheduled throughout the upcoming weeks, but I just wanted to highlight these as like the kinds of things that we're going to be partaking in as we get closer to the election. And there's a picture up there of me alongside. I wanted to find another picture, but I just couldn't in the moment. Myself with our partners from the Public Advocates Office on National Voter Registration Day. And last but not least, I will also want to highlight the tremendous work our youth engagement coordinator, Olivia Brady, is doing with our youth ambassadors. These are 19 young people. They're all New York City high school students, all public high school students from the 5 boroughs. Among them, they speak 7 languages other than English. This has been the 3rd iteration of this program. And this year, it's a combination of joint. They're supporting our outreach efforts, but there's also an educational and leadership building opportunity for them. They're learning about redistricting, local history, the city budget, as well as how those issues connect to urban planning, environmental justice, and other important topics that really motivate young people to get involved in civic engagement. So just connecting those. This is the function of local government. These are the issues that it can impact and why civic engagement is important. So that's really the main thrust of it. They're participating in completing research projects on, voting habits of college students, high school students, limited English proficient voters. Some of this research is going to help with the next iteration of our voter analysis report. And they also planned and hosted the 2022 We the Young People VAAC hearing. That's the youth meeting that Zoilo mentioned at the top of the meeting. So they actually planned and organized that event. And as I mentioned, they're organizing outreach activities. So there is a photo of the team, Olivia in the middle, and our youth ambassadors on the side as well. That was at, I believe, Comic-Con this past weekend. So that is an overview kind of what we're doing and are going to be doing for this November election. That brings my presentation to a close. I'm sorry if I went over time. I kind of lost track there. I didn't realize how many slides there was and how much to cover. I do want to say thank you. It does say thank you on the slide, but I want to say specifically thank you to Amy, who has been incredibly supportive of all of our voter engagement work for as long as I've been here, and longer, obviously, for as long as I've been aware of this agency, and just for many years supporting and the development and sort of supporting with resources this voter engagement work. Just really appreciate that. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you for the inspiration.
Well, thank you, Omar. I mean, your team does amazing work with the limited, I mean, we have devoted resources and adding more, but I mean, it is a small group, and, to do outreach for the entire city, and it's just really amazing. And I think that, that has been noted over and over again in our presentations. Are there any questions for Omar? So again, if you think of questions later, we'll be here. We're going to move right on to the next presentation, which is about our voter guide from Crystal Choi, the Associate Director of Production.
Hi, thank you, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Choi. I'm the Associate Director of Production of the Marketing and Digital Communications Unit at the CFB. I use she, her pronouns. I am a 41-year-old East Asian female with light skin, dark brown eyes, medium length black hair, and I am wearing a solid golden yellow shirt sitting in my office cubicle. Let me just share my screen. There we go. Is that working? Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I can't see it myself, so
Okay.
it was a little confusing.
Yes.
I'll be giving an overview of the production of the official New York City voter guide for the upcoming general election. As you know, Election Day is on Tuesday, November 8th, with the early voting period occurring from Saturday, October 29th to Sunday, November 6th. We are preparing the print and online versions of the voter guide, which will be available in the next few days. They're going to be hitting the mailstream. They're actually currently hitting the mailstream now. The print guide contains information on key dates, how to vote, voters' rights, accessibility resources, and information about the offices that are on the ballot. The online guide contains all the information of the print guide, and it also contains candidate profiles, statements in support or opposition of each ballot proposal, and it also has a tool that allows voters to prepare their ballot choices in advance. So producing the voter guide is an extremely extensive and lengthy process. And to give you a little idea of the scope and magnitude of all the moving parts, we begin initial preparations up to 7 months in advance of each election. This includes procuring resources such as paper and postage. Our policy and research team gets the voter file from the Board of Elections and works with our print and mail vendor to organize and sort it to make sure every registered voter receives a print guide. We also work with vendors to prepare the voter guide submission application, print design templates, website templates, and all of this supports the upcoming voter guide. All the content that we receive is translated, formatted, reviewed, and approved prior to publication and release. So in order to gather these profiles from candidates running for state and federal office, we collaborated with our candidate guidance and policy division, and we conducted outreach to over 200 candidates who were anticipated to run in the general election. These candidates were able to use our voter guide submission application to upload their photos and submit information about their occupation, education, organizational affiliations, and prior public experience. They also indicated the top 3 issues they would address if they were elected and provide a statement which allows voters to learn more about their campaign. So for the current voter guide, we will be displaying 123 completed profiles that we have on file out of the 193 candidates on the general election ballot in the online guide. And as I mentioned previously, information about the ballot proposals will also be online. This includes a summary of each proposal and some points as to what it would mean for the proposal to be passed. We also solicited statements in support or opposition of each proposal from the public, which are then reviewed by the CFB. And these statements will be published so voters can see arguments on both sides of every issue. All content in both the print and online voter guide are translated and produced in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Bengali. Starting in January of 2023, we'll be extending that to 13 additional languages. Currently, the print version of the voter guide will be mailed to all registered voters, and it is actually currently in the mail stream via USPS. So we'll be mailing guides directly to more than 4 million voters, with over 300,000 of them receiving at least one Asian language guide. And we worked with our print and mail vendor to package bulk copies of the voter guide with our other voting information resources, specifically the palm cards and the large print flyers Omar mentioned previously. And Omar and the partnerships and outreach and our policy and research units collaborated together with over 400 partner agencies and organizations across the city to receive and distribute the guides as well. So I hope that gives everyone some insight on how we at the CFB continue to kind of provide as much information to voters as possible so that we can help them make informed choices at the polls. And if you have any questions or comments, I welcome them. And just please feel free to, keep an eye out for your voter guides in the mail. And our online guide will also be published in the upcoming days.
Thank you so much, Crystal. That presentation makes it look, it's complicated, but it makes it look much easier than it is. So much work goes into it. And so we're, vastly appreciative. Crystal has been working on the voter guide for many, many voter guides. So thank you for all the work that you've done in bringing this important resource to New York City voters. Our final presentation is from Mitchell Cohen, who is our content strategy manager.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, I'm Mitchell. I am the content strategy manager. I am a white man with short brown hair wearing a blue shirt, and I have a blurred background behind me. And I'm going to talk about the ad campaign that we have planned this fall. So sharing my screen. Is everyone able to see that okay? Perfect. So I'm going to talk about the ad campaign that we are running through our NYC Votes initiative. Everything I'm about to present is a partnership of our marketing and digital communications team, our content team of Madonna, Natalia, and Autumn, who really work on our core messaging and all of the copy and language that appear in all of our materials. Our design team led by Winnie with Marissa and Sarah Jane, who ensure that everything that we produce is exciting and clear and engaging. And our production team led by Crystal, along with Chase, Murat, and Santiago, who assist with all translation and distribution and make sure that all the trains are running on time on our end. We've also been working with our media buying team at Fenton and our creative team at Bellwether. So with this campaign, we have a few main challenges, knowing that one, this is the third election happening in the city over the past 6 months, with primary elections in June and August. And that means that for this campaign, we want to really view it as an evolution and not a revolution. With people having seen political ads, particularly from us very recently, we want to make sure that what we're presenting this campaign is recognizable and not too much of a departure of what we've been presenting across the city. On the other hand, we also want to make sure that it is still engaging, it is different enough to catch people's attention, and that we're also advertising in places that people will be paying attention to make sure that they're not just seeing the same thing in the same places across the city. So we're very cognizant that people have seen a lot of political ads this year. So to break down our main messaging, you can see up top the tagline from our primary election campaign in August, vote today, change tomorrow. For this campaign, we've really flipped that on its head. We're starting with the inspiration messaging first, and the action information second, and really personalizing the selection with the particular election date in the tagline. That's really our way of making sure this is a bit unique, but still relatable to what people have seen from us in the recent past. For this campaign, we have two main parts of it. First, we have our motivational messaging that is appearing in ads across the city right now. There's an example of subway entrance, which ads have been up for about 2 weeks across the city. And our goal here is to use that, that main tagline that I just shared. You can also see that there are some speech bubbles that you'll be able to see a bit more clearly later that highlight the issues on the ballot that are really at stake in this election. Things like public safety and gun laws, the economy, racial justice, reproductive rights. And so right now, this is all the ads across the city. In about 2 weeks, as polls open for early voting, we're going to be switching our messaging more to get out the vote messaging. And that's where the tagline is going to shift to vote now, change tomorrow. And we're really going to be directing people directly to their poll site. The key audiences for our campaign, as others have mentioned, our priority is really reaching those who are least likely to participate in the democratic process and to go out and vote. Our data tells us that is mostly young voters and newly naturalized citizens. As Omar shared before, the CFB has very particular priority neighborhoods across the city where we know that's most of the voters where we want to be reaching. So all of the ads in this campaign, our online ads are targeted based on age and based on zip code for those priority neighborhoods. And all of the ads that, like the subway entrance ads I just shared, those are all based in the communities across the city that we know need the most engagement in order to get out and vote. Next, I want to break down the types of ads that we are running. We have our digital advertising that you'll see across social media, on YouTube, on streaming TV and radio, on things like Hulu, and Google search and display. We also have our out-of-home advertisements, which are ads that you will just see out in the real world. Things like ads on subway entrances, bus shelters, Link NYC kiosks, in laundromats, mobile billboards, and in newspapers and community and ethnic media. So these are the places that we know that New Yorkers are really visiting every day and are the places that people are most likely to be. We have a pretty even split between these ads. We are spending a bit more on digital, which is one thing that we're excited about because we have really one advantage of having so many elections this year is we have a lot of data of what is working well and how to really optimize and make sure that we're reaching people most effectively. So next, I just want to give a quick preview of what some of these ads are going to look like. So for some of our digital ads on social media, we're going to be appearing on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snap, and for the first time ever, Twitch, which is a just hugely popular online streaming app. All of our ads are going to be appearing in 5 languages: in English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Bengali. So here's a sample of some ads that you'll see on Facebook and Instagram in those 4 languages. And here is, again, we're really prioritizing the issues that are on the ballot with our key messaging, directing people to vote on November 8th. Here are ads that we have planned on Google Display. What this means, if you are like me and have recently started shopping for new shoes, all of a sudden you see those shoes on every website that you're visiting. That is what these are. So these are really important because we know these are some of the ads that people are most likely to see. And we know that people are going to see them once they have expressed an interest in voting or they live in a community where they're likely to have already seen our ads. We know it's important to reach people multiple times. They're most likely to vote if they've been asked to vote more than once. This is a great way that we know that people are going to continually be seeing information about the election and directed toward our website. And lastly, for digital ads, a preview of some of the videos that we have prepared that you will see on YouTube and streaming sites. Our goal is really to position ourselves as a just nonpartisan, easy to understand place for election information. So here we have ads both explaining the type of information that we have available and others that we are going to be really leaning into the issues that are on stake in the election. For our out-of-home advertising, we are also really leaning into issues on the ballot. So here you can see an example of a bus shelter, where we know in places near transportation, things like bus shelters, things like subway entrances are often the most visited places in any community. So those are locations in our priority neighborhoods that we really prioritize making sure that we have our ads available. And here's an example for Link NYC kiosks of the messaging that we're going to be releasing in about 2 weeks that are really directing people to vote as polls are open. On all of our ads, you can also, all of our display ads like this, you can also see we have a QR code in the bottom that if people just scan their phones will take them directly to our website. They'd be able to find all of their information, including the online voter guide that Crystal just shared about. And here's a bit larger example of the subway entrance ads that I recently shared. I think it's just a really great chance to see how we're really prioritizing the issues that we know are at stake in this election. And lastly, one thing that we're, as I mentioned earlier, trying to do is break the mold of other campaigns that we've done. So 2 major ways that we are trying to do that this fall is having mobile billboards with trucks that will be running in all 5 languages across the city, where we were able to choose very specific routes in Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and the Bronx, and each language to make sure that we are just really getting the message out in a way that people may not have seen and might not have expected. And along these lines, we're also doing large scale projections onto buildings in places like the Barclay Center that we know have there are a lot of visitors, and also places that people are likely to take photos and share information on their own. So those are all ads that we were able to really, we're excited about, particularly because we're able to present them in all 5 languages in many of our priority neighborhoods. And with that, I will pass things back to Amy. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mitchell. Do we have any questions for Mitchell? Oh, I see something. Oh, yes. I mean, the campaign is really incredibly eye-catching and part of our rebranding efforts from last year, from 2020, 2021. So really astounding looking ads. So now I'm just, I guess, if there are no questions, I just, wonder if there are any closing remarks from any of the members of the committee. Well, then I will just give my closing remarks. Thank you everyone for coming. I know we went a little bit over our, planned time, but I think that you see that, the amount of work that's doing, and really it's great, a large amount of work, very impressive. And again, we've built this work over since 2011, over 11 years. And I think we can be really proud of the amount of work that we have done and the quality of the work that we are doing. And we continue to reach New Yorkers across the city and in the targeted neighborhoods for underrepresented populations. And we will continue to do that work. And while I will no longer be here, I know that we have a great staff who are incredibly dedicated and devoted and competent in the work that they are doing, and under the direction of Eric Friedman, who is our Assistant Executive Director of Public Affairs, and his deputy, Amanda Melillo, that the work will continue with the new Executive Director. And I hope you all keep following us and following our work. Thank you everybody who presented and everyone who came. And good night.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to the interpreters as well that worked all night long. Thank you.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.